definitely not. Wasn't Tornado Alley. And,
no.
And you just look in Oklahoma yesterday. We had a little hail yesterday. And in Oklahoma, they showed 50 cars that the windshields were totally taken out by golf ball hail and baseball hail. So, I say somebody like Jimmy's going to realize it because it's going to take him a week to dig out because he made a bad choice on the type of foliage that he put in his yard or something like that.
I felt one thing. I did two things last night. That's all I had time to do. I went out to our pool on Sunday. I just finished opening our 40-year-old gunite pool. We drained it. We acid washed it, and we filled it up, and it was beautiful. It was sparkling.
Ah, nice.
And gorgeous.
Not anymore, huh?
And I look out, and there you couldn't see water. It was covered end to end with leaves and sticks. And, of course, the filter wasn't running, so now the water's getting dirty. So the first thing I did was get all those leaves out of there, and then after you got the surface leaves off, you notice there's just as many on the bottom, but I couldn't vacuum them yet because I have no power. And then I went to the front yard and with a big broom started brushing off my driveway where there were sticks and everything. I moved the big tree that was across it, and I felt like I was shoveling snow. There was that much debris that I was more like shoveling snow than it was sweeping off the driveway. So it's one thing after another.
The only thing that I can point out that we think we're getting pretty big in life, and we realize how small we are compared to nature. This was just a tease, and we got things figured out. We've got this, the internet, and we got all these things, but boy, are we pretty harmless when Mother Nature decides she wants to give us a reality check.
Like a slap across the face. Our power went off up on State Street where I live at 20 minutes to 2. We're into watching soap operas. Dave, remember those days, Young and Restless and Bold and Beautiful? We watched them 30 years. Mary's watched them for 40, and I've watched them for 25. I don't watch Bold and Beautiful anymore. I watch Victor Newman and Young and Restless, Paul. Believe it or not, I'm a soap opera freak. At 20 minutes to 2, the power went off, and it resumed. We had it back on at 9:45 last night, 9:45. So it was down about 8 hours, and now we're waiting for Time Warner to get their act together to get us some, because I'm one of the all the best, as they call it. And the problem with putting all your eggs in one basket, not a shot at our friends from Time Warner, but when one goes down, they all go down. No phone service for the dog, no internet, and obviously no TV. So we're waiting for Time Warner.
Well, I'd be curious, and you might know this better than I hear.
Sure.
Over the years, how many days has Gould's Pumps had to close?
Oh, exactly. Not often. Once in my 43-and-a-half-year history, major ice storm, Kaz Massima was the police chief in Seneca Falls, and I was at home still, living at home on Spring Street, and they came down with a cop car, and the ice storm was so thick, and they were using the megaphone saying, "Do not leave your homes." And that was the only day. And actually, Dave, later in that morning, I went into Gould's Pumps just to see what was going on, but it was shut down, basically. If you wanted to go in, they didn't stop you from going in. Very rare that Gould's Pumps ever shuts down. Very rare. So it's kind of unique in the fact that that's happened. But like you say, we see people in Tornado Alley, those people out in Joplin, Missouri, the F5 tornado that wiped out that poor city or town. I guess we as Paul pointed out, we're very fortunate. We got a little backhand from the Mother Nature Central, but as far as I was concerned, it's just something that we'll deal with. The thing that's interesting to me is when it happened, everybody's out in the street talking because you got nothing else to do.
It's strange.
You got no power. You got no TV. And Mary's climbing the walls trying to figure out what to do. So she's out and she's clipping bushes in front of our windows yesterday. And we're talking to people. And there's not much you can do. You're just waiting for something to happen. So I got to admit, the weather forecast was right on. They did say east of Rochester would get the brunt of it. And they were right on.
Yeah, I mean, and Penn Yan got hit. Auburn got hit. Cortland County had like 1,800 without power.
Right.
But it was a strange feeling. About 9 o'clock, I called in an order on my cell phone to Cicino's. We stayed at my mother's house last night because she was alone and we had no power. And I don't know if you heard about our bat situation.
Yeah, the bats,
so I got a lot going on in the house. You don't want to sleep in a house that has bats in it and no electricity. You want to get out of there.
Especially with all the vampire stories going around.
Yeah, who knows what would happen overnight.
Well, if the lights are out, the ball's in their corner for the bats because they don't need lights.
That's right. So I went to Cicino's to pick up dinner for everybody about 9 o'clock, And, as you drove through town, you just see a lot of people out for walks, a lot of people standing on corners commiserating with other people,
Right.
and a lot of neighbors over at neighbors' porches and things like that. It's actually, thank goodness nobody was hurt. Some people did have some property damage.
Sure.
Hopefully they were insured, but
Right.
stuff like this kind of shakes things up a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I enjoyed it, and I'm not going to enjoy the cleanup, but I think it's just another example of the type of community we have here. So you're going to see over the next few days neighbors helping neighbors, a lot of people checking in on elderly
Sure.
residents. It's one of the bonuses of living in a community like we have here in Seneca Falls or Waterloo.
Exactly.
Could have been catastrophic.
Could have been.
Particularly if it had struck a day or two earlier during the holiday weekend.
Good point.
The state park full with campers
Oh,
and things
yeah.
flying around like
Exactly.
crazy, and more people out and about than there were yesterday.
What I found interesting is I went out yesterday morning about, 10 o'clock or so to run some errands, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was a nice blue sky day, but it was hot, and it seemed like an hour and a half later the clouds started to amass, and it was kind of weird. When I got home around noon, we were having a sandwich for lunch, and I looked out, and the clouds had just moved in, sort of like, on the fast track.
Yeah.
And I went in and told Mary, I said, wow, the sky's kind of ominous. It looks kind of dark all of a sudden. And it looked like it happened in like 40, 50 minutes.
Yeah, I was up here.
It was weird.
And as you know, up here in the studio,
Yeah.
no windows.
That was weird.
So what happened was I decided, luckily at about the right time. There's one way up and down.
Right.
Elevator
Right.
from this studio.
Right.
You can make your way through the abyss in the other side of the building and eventually emerge by the Fall Street Pharmacy. But they have doors locked from this end, so I would have had to make a call. Anyways, I digress. I went outside the door of the studio and looked out the window. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
I know.
And then I questioned, geez, is this a good idea for me to get on this elevator right now?
I know.
I said, now or never. So I hit the button, and I did luckily get down. And then shortly after I got down, it just exploded. You wouldn't believe what we were seeing out that window. Those canal side trees were bent over 90 degrees. And another problem is, I guess it's because of the time of year with all the fresh new foliage, the drains were clogging with the leaves. And so that was creating mini floods all over the area. The whole canal harbor, it looked as if the canal actually came over its edge, because the roadway that runs the length of the canal was underwater completely because of those drains were clogged. And then eventually some folks came along and raked those grates clean, and it drained. But
Well, listen, we're here talking to Dave Barnick. Let's give you a little background on Dave for people that may not know, and that would be shocking because Dave has been a fixture on, obviously, the radio back when my days, and, of course, he did some work for Finger Lakes DailyNews.com up in Geneva, and, of course, we're happy to have him being a contributor to what we're about to unleash a week from tomorrow, which is Newark Pilot Baseball. But to give you a little background on Dave, back in the early 70s, 1970 to be specific, George Sewin and Sam Bunis, not George, Bud Sewin and Sam Bunis, George's dad, opened up a radio station called WSFW. And I was working at Gould's. I'd been at Gould's for a period of 6 years. And Sam Bunis knew that I had a desire to do sportscasting. Grew up trying to become a sportscaster in my own mind, as obviously trying to figure it out. And even though I never would leave Gould's Pumps because I was making $1.58 an hour, $1.58.5 to be exact, plus benefits, Dave, back in those days, Paul, you remember those days. But Sam said they were looking for a guy to come in and do some sports. Would you like to go down and audition? And there were 13 people trying out for the position in 1970. And thank God I had worked on my craft for some 20-some years and was lucky to get the job. And as I started doing a morning show, which, by the way, Dave may recall, I used to do an early show called Weber on Sports at 6 a.m., and, Paul, those were the days when only people could listen to you, Dave, were cows. But little did we progress to get a show on at 7:30, which I loved for 20-some years. But being the guy that started the sports at WSFW, we needed to enhance, because we had people beckoning for baseball, basketball, football games were primary than major sports, and I couldn't do everything, obviously, as we tried to. I think we did like 3 or 4 games the first year. So we sent out a all-points bulletin looking for someone to come in and help me and WSFW do high school sports. And in comes Dave Barnick from over New York, and he auditioned, and we hit it off right from the get-go. And Dave was joined our team. Mike, me, and him were the only two at that point. I don't even know Dave if Cotterill was there at that time. I think it was the days.
I don't think so.
I think it was pre-Cotterill. So me and Dave started doing a little bit of a schedule of games. We kind of had a good chemistry working. And as Dave would tell you, I guess I'm going to let him say it, but we went to different places to cover certain games. But it became obvious we had sponsors lined up to try to cover more sports. And they were really wanting us to cover a decent-sized schedule. So it became obvious that we continue to increase our schedule, and then a few years later, I'm going to guess, 5 to 8 years later after you came on board, we went to Clyde. We needed an all-points bulletin for yet another person to help us, and Mr. Clyde, Jack DiPolito, came in. And it's a funny story about Jack. There were like 3 or 4 people that had auditioned to be the third person in our crew. I was undecided on who to take at the time because I listened to their tapes, and they were on cassettes. And I can remember this to this day. I think you listened to some of the tapes, and I don't think you were decided at that point, really. Hope Jack's not listening, which way to go. And I was sitting in Green Street where I lived, and Charlie and Ann Kay were over, and we were deciding on between 3 individuals to come join our team. And Ann and Charlie Kay had heard DiPolito, something about his style or whatever. He does have a unique style. And Ann and Charlie Kay voted for Jack DiPolito, and the next day we offered Jack the opportunity to join us. And Ann and Charlie Kay are responsible for the hiring of Jack DiPolito because I really wasn't sure which way to go. And Jack joined us, and it was David, myself, and Jack. And the 3 amigos then would just go everywhere about every other night, as Dave, you recall. And what are your memories of coming on board? It was like we went from like 6 games a year to, I don't know, 12 football games and 30 basketball games? It was pretty hectic back then.
You know,
a lot of games.
Through all the memories, just
Right.
listening to you, Harold,
Sure.
I think the thing that stands out for me first and foremost is that you developed lifelong relationships with yourself and Jack and I and
Joe Houck.
And one of my biggest regrets, both in radio and in my other career in chemical dependency treatment, I wish I'd kept good notes and bios on all the cast of characters.
Oh my God!
That we've run through over the years.
Oh, I know we've had.
And each job was insane enough that the other one would balance it out.
I know.
And it was great fun.
Oh yeah,
You know, you had a few run-ins, you had a few problems, but by and large,
it was pretty
the
good.
wonderful people, the kids, coaches, and the parents, and the people that appreciated us who couldn't make the games.
Oh, they had,
because of work or health or age or whatever the factors were. That's always meant a lot. And it surprised me in the years that I've been out of it how many people will still come up and say, geez, I really enjoyed when you do those games.
Oh, yeah.
And are you thinking of are you doing it anymore? And I would say no. And here we are talking about it again.
Paul, you certainly owned the business. You were certainly obviously involved and no doubt sponsoring a lot of these broadcasts that we did, and because you were always very much community-minded. What are your memories back in the 70s and 80s when we did all those games? We did a lot of them. And we came to Waterloo a lot of times.
I've went to a lot of games, and then I listened to a lot of games that I couldn't do because of the business that I was in, or I was just and the excitement. It could have not been that way, but you guys made it very exciting. The one thing you got to do when you have to pay attention on the radio. Television, I don't know what you're talking about, a soap opera that's been around for 30 years. I had somebody say they hadn't watched it for 10 years, and they turned it on, and they were right where they were. He said it was fine. I caught right up. But radio, you have to really pay attention. So the people who are doing radio have to have the excitement, the enthusiasm, as well as the knowledge, as you guys did. And you're going to a different venue all the time. You got to remember names going up and down the floor. I mean, it's not like everybody on Ovid is the Smith brothers, and or something like that. And I thought you guys brought a high excitement intensity and and the kids really enjoyed it. I think the kids that were on the floor, knowing the game was broadcasted, might even performed it. Example being going back to when Geneva High and Waterloo used to have some wars in the 80s, when you remember a lot of people went to colleges from there. Tyrone Scott went to Boston, Augustine Antonelli's, Schweitz's,
Guy Spader.
Yep.
John Dunn.
Yeah, it was just seemed. I mean, I know that could be done again, but I don't know what the market is for it. Wintertime sports, a lot of like Dave was saying, the older people really depended on it. I mean, I really thought they wouldn't even start the car. Oh, no unnecessary travel. They said yesterday, no unnecessary travel in Seneca County and Seneca County South till 7 o'clock. I couldn't get through Waterloo last night at 6 o'clock. Of course, those people were without power, and they were at Chinchino's, and they were all at the restaurants. They were all out, whoever had power, getting stuff. I mean, that's the way we are now. We can get out a lot better. But you guys brought the game to the people, and I thought you bought it with a lot of quality and enthusiasm in your voices. And I think that's when Dave got his nickname, the Mouth of the South. I think that's just because he represented the South. I never knew him being louder than you. Well, I never knew anybody being louder than you.
Well, listen.
What I'm saying is,
Dave would deliver some shots my way, and we would come back and forth. And there was a chemistry that we drew up that basically, I think Dave, I don't speak for Dave since he's here, but when you work together so many years as we did and did so many games together, he knew what I was going to say, and I knew what you were going to say, and that was the beauty of it. And we became more comfortable with Jack because Jack left. Jack had a lot of levity, and DePolito's, he would come out with some of the greatest lines and crack us up. And not that Jack wasn't capable as a sportscaster. He did some games, obviously, and was very capable. But he would be just you never knew what he'd say because he worked for Social Security back then in Geneva, and he hated his job. Now that he's retired, who cares? And he used to make some classic lines about.
I can guarantee you he still has all the notebooks from
Jack,
all the games he wrote with those Social Security red pens that he always had. Well.
He used to complain and bitch and complain about Social Security. And I told him years ago, I'd say, wait, Jack, you're going to be there when I start collecting. Obviously, now that I've been collecting for some 5 years. Jack wasn't there when I retired, but he used to badmouth that office up in Geneva, and he couldn't wait to get out. But those were the good old days. But I think one of the things, and Dave, please echo in the comment if you disagree with the comment. I think we were centered on covering Seneca Falls, obviously Minders and Waterloo. Of course, Dave's presence had us think South End. South Seneca, Jack Guinan, basketball, the Romulus and South Seneca rivalries, phenomenal basketball rivalry. We started obviously zeroing in on those games. They were packed houses. They didn't like each other, and I think, Dave, I'm not saying something. It was just bitter rivalry, basketball at its finest hour. The football programs really never, to me, emerged as, showcase programs, and Dave was a former football player. The point is, but I remember going to Romulus and South Seneca, and as we were broadcasting the games at mid-court, I was worried there was going to be a couple of fights break out. Dave, you remember some of those games? They were pretty heated.
So was the temperature in those gyms.
Oh, they were hot. You're right. And those fans from Romulus and South Seneca was like, the Hatfield McCoys are now being shown on History Channel, ironically, 3-part series. And I always got nervous at South Seneca and in Romulus when we would do Romulus because the place would be jammed. You always expected a sellout. Neither side liked the other side, and they were good basketball players.
But when the games were over,
they shook hands, but it was bitter during the game.
Some of my best friends
I know.
In those communities,
right.
And there's an excellent chance those schools may merge.
Yeah, I know you're talking about that.
Yep.
Which kind of ironic, though, and I think one of the I told Jim Santacorpi when I came to work for him several months ago, decided to come down here and leave Finger Lakes Daily News Radio. Because this was a new venue, and I've enjoyed what I've done here so far. We're going to do a lot more things with Jim and this station and this outfit here. But one of the things that I did, ironically, and it was only because of a dumb luck buddy of mine telling me to go, I was sitting around at LaBelle's in Waterloo having a beer with some of my buddies up there. I think we had just come back doing a Waterloo game. You weren't there. You were heading home, and DePolito wasn't there. And somebody said to me, you should go over to Clyde and check out the Golden Eagles. I said, Clyde? At that time it didn't register with me. They said, no, they got a great program over there. And I don't think WAC spends a lot of attention, WACK in Newark, which is a 3-iron away from their press box. I said, okay. And Mike Ferrandino and Joe Ferrandino, a couple of Clyde guys, Mike, by the way, is the father-in-law of the owner of Ticino's, Sal.
Huh.
He's married to his daughter. And I don't know what made me do it, but one Friday night, we didn't have a game for whatever reason. We weren't doing a game. And I don't know what made me drive to Clyde. Well, the Ferrandino's invited me to go to Little Red Barrel, the famous restaurant where we always stopped, a legendary place. It used to be a lot more fun than it is today. I hate to say that, but I went over to see the Ferrandino's, and they took me to the gym, and I watched to the football field, and I watched a football game. Nice crowd, good athletes on Clyde, really good athletes who were playing, I don't know, maybe Lions, where I was born. I thought, we never paid any attention to Clyde. Nick Turcola was there, the legendary Nick Turcola, and he was AD at the time and the coach, and I was just chit-chatting with him, and he came down to the restaurant afterwards, and he said, you ought to come over and do a couple of our games on next year's schedule. I said, I saw the crowd, nice spirit.
Great facility.
Great press box. I said, you know what? I'm going to book a game or two for Clyde. So I did, penciled in. I go over there and figure Newark's going to be their whack because we're from Seneca Falls. They don't know us. Ironically, a lot of people listened to WSFW from Clyde at the time, unbeknownst to me. So we drive into Clyde to do our first game, and I thought we were going to be put up in a stance because I figured Wack would be there. Wack didn't show up to do the game. We were asked to come up to the broadcast booth. Nice setting over the field, beautiful field. The rest is history. We kept increasing our games in there, and when basketball came along, we would do, 5 or 7 of their games. We would cover their sectionals. We covered, 3 to 4 of their football games, and they loved us, and we loved them. And it was only because somebody saw me at LaBelle's asking me to visit Clyde. We became their home station, as you know, Dave. They loved WSFW radio. Wack would come once in a while to do a game. They'd put him in the stands. Remember? We always had broadcasting rights up on that booth, and I don't know, it was just dumb luck that I went there, and as you know, Dave, we gained a lot of friendships in Clyde.
And
phenomenal place to do sports. And oh, by the way, they won every year in both sports.
It was
phenomenal programs.
I remember the year that they won the state basketball title. They also won a state football title.
Amazing.
Which allowed me a chance to broadcast from the Carrier Dome.
Oh, yeah.
But in the state basketball championship they won,
amazing.
There was a number 1 undefeated team who had this player by the name of Adonal Foyle, who went on to about a 15-year career in the NBA.
Right.
And their teamwork was phenomenal. And Waterloo and Minders, I think that same year, both had girls' teams in the state's Final Four. It was quite a run for schools from our area. And you talk about running around, bouncing around, covering different things.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty
amazing.
It was great stuff. I just want to go back to Paul Helstrom for one moment, because when I see Paul, other than knowing he's a solid class act,
right,
I think of how great the restaurant, how great the sauce. And I also remember his son, very good player on some good Waterloo teams. And then I'm playing in this old man basketball at Romulus, I think, on a Sunday morning, where his son lands awkwardly on my foot, and he twisted his ankle so bad. But those are some of the memories that I recall from those days.
Well, if I recall correctly, I think Paul gave us a gift certificate. Paul was the Player of the Week for some period of time.
He did.
Athlete of the Week.
Yeah, we announced it during the broadcast, and the Verke days, the Schweitz days in basketball, we were criticized because we gave the same certificate to the same kid about 3 weeks in a row, and they brought the world to an end asking, that's ridiculous. So we changed the rules, I remember, because I went up to Schweitz and I went up to some of the great stars, Dunley and basketball, and same with Minders. We just Terry Downtown Brown from Clyde, and some of these guys, they'd run it every week. Score 38 with 12 rebounds. Hello.
So Verke scores 42, and you got to give it to a kid who scored 16.
Exactly. You finally got to the point where you couldn't give it to this. And I told these guys, he's super jocks, because we got a lot of criticism for giving it to the same guy every week. You got to split it up. So we decided, I went on air and we said, hey, guys, don't take it personally. And I would go up to the jocks who really were the outstanding athletes. I hate to say it. But you literally could give it to the same guy 7 weeks in a row. And Paul used to give us those things, and I remember that. And most people were pretty cool about it. But I think, Dave, some of the memories before we take our first commercial break this morning here on the Dog and Pauly. Dave Barnick's our good friend. And, by the way, we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about our embracing and our launching high school baseball action. Newark Pilot baseball action starts a week from tomorrow, June 7th. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But, Dave, one thing that you can comment, and I know that we were in Ovid during a heavy rainstorm broadcasting South Seneca football out of your car. We almost got electrocuted. Some of the classic memories, they didn't have a broadcast booth. Pouring rain.
Was that Romulus, actually?
Was it Romulus?
And the story was
okay.
You were going to pull the plug and not do it, which would have been the
smart thing to do.
Prudent call.
I wanted to
and
do
you
it.
said to me, I looked at Tony Alvero's eyes, and I just couldn't not do the broadcast. Right. So we're in my lime green Chevy Impala, but I plugged the electric in and felt it go all the way up to my shoulder. I thought it was my golf swing that my shoulder was sore over now, but maybe it was from that.
Broadcasting could not see from me to Dave Barnick, which is about 4 feet away. And we're trying to call play-by-play in this mud slop field. Oh, my God. Total attendance that day may have been 12. Oh, God. And we're on the air. I can recall going to Lenny Calavito's Newark High School for our first broadcast at Newark, and the AD meets us at the gate. And we said, where's our setup? Up on top of the roof. Remember, Dave? On another adjoining roof there. We had to climb up to it. And it started snow and a little bit sleet, Paul. We're freezing to death, shaking our hands. But the show went on. We tried to broadcast it.
I remember you shivering in my house in between games, too.
Yes, you did. We went before another game.
And I remember we were doing a game in Ovid.
Yep.
That I think it was GVA was also doing the game.
Right.
And Joe Pitcher was accompanying a guy younger than me, and I was in my early 20s at the time, named Mike Cimatelli. And the weather was so bad, Joe abandoned him. And unfortunately, both those gentlemen have passed. I don't know if you knew that about Mike. He passed in the last year or two as well.
But one of the things that we did, which was kind of stupid if you look back on it, Paul, we were so aggressive. We had so many people, so many sponsors that wanted to cover local sports. It was incredible. I mean, we had everybody engaged. Schools Pumps. The big companies were engaged in sponsoring all of our broadcasts. They wanted more and more and more. So what we did too often is we would do, and Samantha was small and Dave's kids were small, we would do a Friday night game, a Saturday afternoon game, and then culminate with a Saturday night game. And those were tough weekends, Dave, if I remember correctly. We were pretty hoarse at the end of those things. And, of course, that's just the way we did it. We had a lot of triple-header weekends. I remember those days.
Before you leave this to go to the sponsors or anything, I'd like to say that the reason you did those games, 3 on some weeks, if you do a Saturday afternoon and a Sunday, I don't think you showed partiality to anybody. I mean, you went to Clyde, it turned into something. You went out south to the south end of the county. You went to the natural rivalries in this area and stuff. And I think the people got a genuine ring that you guys were excited for the players, not just to be there and blow your own pipe. But with all the good that you've done, you started this out by saying that Napolito, Barnick, Weber, the three amigos. Immediately after the first year of broadcasting, as I sat in my restaurant in different places, the name that came up for you guys then was Larry, Curly, and Moe. So you might have been kind when you said the three amigos, because that's what a lot of people labeled you guys back then. But you come a long way, baby.
Well, the Stooges made a comeback recently in the movies. So
that's true. Hey, two quick stories before we take our break. It happened in Dave's town of Ovid. I was going to meet Dave out, and we were going to go and do a game out at his place, a South Seneca game, and I was going to meet him at the complex. And I can't remember who South Seneca was playing that day. It might have been Romulus, and Romulus might have had a decent team that year. So I did a Saturday morning sports show, and I always previewed the game, and I always made a prediction. So I picked against South Seneca, and which is not abnormal. I picked against Minders a few times, and they threw eggs at the house on Green Street. Oh, yeah. And but, Mary said, stop making predictions. They're going to kill us. So I picked against South Seneca, and we were going to broadcast a game from Ovid. Well, before I met Dave and Jack or whatever, I stopped at a convenience store, David, and don't ask me which store it was, little convenience store. I was going to get some chips and some stuff to bring to the game. And I was wearing the WSFW jacket that we got, and it had dog on there, and on the back had WSFW. sports on front. And I'm walking down the aisle looking for chips and crackers and so forth, some Pepsis or Cokes, whatever. I'm loading up stuff, and there's these two ladies. The owner was a lady, and she was talking to somebody, obviously, who she knew. And I'm earshot away from them, and I'm wearing my WSFW jacket, and I hear this lady tell the owner, who's behind the register, I hear WSFW is coming out here to do the game in about an hour. And her name may have been Maud. Yeah, Maud, yep. Yeah. God, I can't stand that Weber guy. God, I heard him this morning. He's always picking against us. And she is just berating the living hell out of me. And I am like 8 feet away in one of the aisles, and I've got all this stuff, man. And I got dog. And I go, so, and she goes, he is so arrogant, so pompous. He never picked for South Seneca. He's always going against the Falcons. I can't stand him, but I don't know why I listen to that guy. So I kind of roll up. I can't take my jacket out. I roll up to the counter, and this lady kind of moves to the side. And the owner says, anything else going to help you with this? I said, no, this is very good. And the lady looks at me and says, that voice sounds familiar. She goes, you're not that Weber guy. I go, yeah, unfortunately I am. I says, thanks for the comments, though. Well, I thought her face was going to turn beet red. She had just ripped me apart, which is good because she listened. And I have no problem with people ripping you apart as long as you listen. And she became one of our best friends, and I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, it's been so many years. As a matter of fact, they mentioned their names on the broadcast. They even bought a couple Pepsis, Dave, of what we were bringing to the game. I'll never forget that. Lady just rips me to shreds, and I'm like 8 feet away from her, calling me arrogant. Me, Paul? No, not a chance. We got a lot more stories to tell you. Dave Barnick's our special guest for the whole hour. Obviously, the Dog and Pauly podcast is brought to you by some great sponsors. Hey, I was talking about Marshall's Auto Sales. They still got the 5 or 6 cars on routes 5 and 20 here. The car's looking pretty good. They got price tags on the windshield, but you can, I'm sure, negotiate with my buddy Dick Marshall, who's a great sponsor of our program. Big NASCAR fan. I'm not sure he's happy about Casey Kane winning last week in the Coca-Cola 600. But if you're looking for a nice used car, check out Marshall's Auto Sales on routes 5 and 20. He's been around here for over 40 years. And, you know, I don't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. I told you I've been using their lead technician, Tommy Thompson, for car issues. He was nice enough to take care of my Chevy Cobalt. I had a situation with something in the brake system. He took care of that a few weeks ago. And Mary's car needed charged up air conditioner. It's that time of the year you need air conditioning. Who did I bring it to? Tommy Thompson. He had me in and out of there in about 12 minutes. Charged it up, got the levels right. So now Mary, driving down the road, can get coolness in this heat. So Marshall's Auto Sales here on routes 5 and 20, a great sponsor of our show. Lizard's Tailgater Lounge, another good friend of mine, my buddy Scott Trickler. He's always got specials going on. Check out Lizard's up there on Church Street in Waterloo, a legendary bar, and tell him you heard about it on the Dog and Pauly show. Lizard's Tailgater Lounge, always got entertainment on the weekends, always specials every night. It's something like any other place. I might stop up later tonight and have a beer with him. It's hilarious. If you don't laugh when you're at that bar, you're never going to laugh in your life. Pauly, what's happening? Wait a minute, Paul. The line of the century for Deluxe Restaurant in Geneva, are the Bullheads gone?
The Bullheads are officially gone.
They're finally gone.
They had a long run this year.
I know.
A long run. Yeah. They.
What's happening at the Deluxe?
Here's what's happening. There's been a little. This usually in when the weather starts turning nice.
Right.
We suffer a little bit. People tend to get in the backyards and go to the places that have decks. Well, we went from one extreme to the other. In May, got really hot. So the people really were coming in for air conditioning already, which usually doesn't. We usually suffer for 4 to 5 weeks of 80 to 85 to 90 degree weather with people abandoning us and going to the outsides and stuff. But and then we pick back up after the 4th of July. But Charlie says that the weather's been uncannily hot in March and then May. And in between that, we had April. So he says that it's just, you can't believe the numbers. They're beating the past. So, I mean, that's all you got to go by. I mean, I want to see the other places that have their investments. They have these decks and outside eating, and they have this different kind of food that appeals to you when the weather's nice. But when the weather's been either warm or stormy, so the inside, we've been really Charlie says we're on a record course, and that's good. That's awesome. So we're doing really good. And like I say, Charlie keeps watching baseball games, and I tell him, Charlie, September 1st you watch baseball games. We go through this every year. The Mets are 5 games ahead of the Yankees. That's all. You know, and then September rolls around, and things are what they are. And But things are going really good, and we're really happy to be where we are. The Lee family are tremendous people
to
work for, and they were present. We had a nice weekend up in the park in Waterloo, the Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I was up there with Mary.
Yeah, and we had the run in the morning, and a couple of the Lees participated in the run, and they were well represented. We broke a record this year. We flirted with 400 runners. Some didn't show. We would have had 400. I think we ended up with 375. Was a nice 5K. We had the McIntyre woman from Seneca Falls. Yeah. She's approaching her 90th birthday.
God bless.
And she finished the race. Wow. And so everybody was there to applaud her at the finish line. Everything went well. Today is Memorial Day.
Yep. And your ceremony should be unscathed with the weather. It's supposed to be nice.
Yep. That's the way it is. This is Memorial Day. I know we benefit things. We set things up so for our own convenience, but you don't change Thanksgiving Day, and you don't change the 4th of July. So today's Memorial Day.
Seneca Falls schools are off today, so those kids have Memorial Day off.
Yeah. Even the Goulds Pumps people are celebrating today. But the thing of it is, Memorial Day this year got a lot more attention. I don't know, a lot of more people that carry clout, like people like Trace Atkins and country people who normally are very patriotic anyway and not afraid to speak their minds. But other celebrities got out, and I thought Obama made some pretty good speeches about that at the Tomb of the Unknown and places. And people are being more aware of the sacrifices that a few make, so many can have what we have today, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, myself and Mary made a trip up to Lafayette Park, checked out the various tents. That was fun. Had a little something to eat. Listened to a couple of groups, a little bit of Mugshot, which is a little bit high end for me because I like the more softer music. But we enjoyed it. We sat in the tent and frequented the vendors, and it was fun. It was really nice, and everybody connected up there. I don't want to mention anyone's name because I'll screw it up, but anyone connected with putting all that together, kudos from FingerLakes1.com and the Dog and Pauly Show. Jimmy, you being a board member of the Country Club, obviously myself and David and yourself, obviously members of the club. Give us an update on the Country Club. Things are rolling full speed ahead. You told me the course is in gorgeous shape. We didn't play last weekend.
Yeah, it was in gorgeous shape, and then the storm hit.
Yep.
But what I got to report, they had 20 to 30 trees down, but no major trees that affect the makeup of a individual hole.
Right.
Pine tree on 9, a pine that was already kind of failing.
Sure.
A pine tree on 7, and then a couple trees across tees like on 14 and 15. But those are falling from the woods.
Right.
So once you remove them, you won't. So no major damage. And yes, this weekend that course was in the best shape it's been in 10 years maybe.
Wow, that's awesome.
Greens were fast and smooth. They held a shot but were firm enough to be fast. The fairways are cut, well defined, and this time of year, of course, the roughs are full. You don't want to hit it in the rough. But yeah, it's great, and the food's been great at the restaurant. You couldn't ask for a better start to the season than
Bob
we've had.
Fuller's doing an outstanding job there.
Working hard.
Yeah. I would only say with the tree damage, secretly, not so secretly now, I was hoping the tree over the pond on 17 would come down.
Because I always hit it, don't you?
I do.
I always hit it. I can't get right at that. I'm thinking of hitting an 8-iron to the right and leap in the second shot on. It's ridiculous.
Well, I remember a few years back, the 16th hole at Seneca Falls Country Club. Toughest hole in Central New York.
Yep.
It used to be even tougher.
I remember.
It's a dogleg right, and you got to keep your drive left.
Yep.
And there's woods on both sides, but you got to keep your drive left. Yep. Otherwise, you'll have trees blocking There's trees in the front right of that green. So if you're not left enough, you'll have to hit either over those trees or lay up or slice it around. And a pond on the left of the green. So, but it got a little bit easier a few years ago. 3 years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago. Lightning storm came through and struck down the biggest one of those trees in that bunch. So now it's still difficult, but it's more reasonable. I think
would hit a glorious second shot thinking you made it over there, and all of a sudden, click, and you'd be down underneath the tree.
I remember those 7.
Days. Yeah, I think that we called it the Birdsall tree because I remember he was one of the biggest complainers back then. Of course, the way he hits his driver, he's only left with 7 or 8 iron.
Yeah, he shouldn't complain.
Yeah. Well, Jim, a lot of things going on. Of course, we got still the $500 coupon if anyone's interested in joining the club. Obviously, they're accepting entries. If you were not a member in 2011, you can take a $500 coupon discount off your price. The fees for the year are $11.65 for a single. With tax, it's a little over $1,200. So if you're not been a member in 2011, you're looking at $7-something.
Yeah, and don't wait any longer.
Right.
It's Memorial Day. I mean,
Exactly.
pretty much I think this is the last show we're going to be talking about the membership specials. We'll focus more on greens fee specials. But if you've been on the fence,
right, now's the time to jump in.
Last year we played well into November.
Oh, yeah.
The course is open officially till October 31st. But if the weather is good in November, like it has been recently, we'll keep the carts. So you can get a lot of value for that membership for sure.
Now, you had the 4 for 3 for May, is that obviously with a couple days to go.
Yeah, get down there for the next couple days until May 31st.
Yep.
You're going to bring 4 golfers, pay for 3, and that includes cart. And then in June, we don't know exactly what we're going to do, but there will be another special in June, so stay tuned for that.
A lot of things happening. So if you're interested in contacting Seneca Falls Country Club, it is in the greatest shape it's ever been in my opinion. And certainly ask that you give a call down there. Their number down there to talk to either, as Dave pointed out, Bob Fuller, general manager, new title this year, lots of responsibilities. And, of course, Kevin, our man Kevin inside, nice young man. Kevin, their number is 315-568-5202. Or you can email them down there at Seneca Falls Country Club, membership at SenecaFallsCountryClub.com. And, Jim, before we get off the country club, we have a big event coming up that you and me will be involved in. That's in the month of July. Why don't you give a little overview of what that is going to be?
Well, the New York State Women's Amateurs come into the country club, and we're going to try to put together a live webcast of the final day. I don't have too many details because we're doing the Newark Pilots next week, so I'm focused on that.
Yep.
And then last week we did a live remote, the crew from the 31st Lap podcast, which motor racing podcast, Chris Marquardt, Mike Mallett, Rich Post, John Bombs. They went to Utica Rome Speedway and did a live pre-race and a live post-race show at the Victoria 200, which is one of the biggest events of the year, and it was wildly successful. And they also had speakers on site, so their show was not only being webcast, but it was being broadcast live on site for the people in front of the stage that listen. They had interviews with the top 3 finishers after. They had race highlights.
Yeah. Well done.
Congratulations to those guys. I got to be honest with you. When we try to do ventures like this, I always keep my fingers crossed because, a lot can go wrong. This is still kind of early on in the days of these remote webcasts. When we do it here in the studio, everything is set. But when you bring things elsewhere, there's a lot of intangibles. So congratulations to those guys. 31st Lap podcast. There's a link on the front page of FingerLakes1.com. You can watch those shows. They did a great job. And
by the way, speaking of the Newark Pilots, just give you a little background. We're probably going to go past 10 o'clock hour, and that's okay too. One thing that we want to talk about is Jim was approached. A gentleman named Bob Ullman, who will be here next week with their head coach, and I think his name is Mr. Ebright.
Craig.
They're going to both be here. The owner and the coach will be here in Dave Barnick's couch next Wednesday for the Dog and Pauly. And basically, Newark Pilot Baseball, Mr. Ullman is quite the mover and shaker. From what I understand, I have not been to Newark yet. We're going to make a road trip over before we start broadcasting to check out the complex. He saw FingerLakes1.com, became interested in Jim's website.
He saw the webcast of our high school basketball games.
And he we did 3, which was incredibly very popular. 3 basketball broadcasts or webcasts. We did over 10,000 hits, and we did Clyde Lions, Waterloo Newark Girls, and of course Minders Wayne, and they was incredibly received by the audience from all over the place. So he liked what he saw, and he's contacted Jim about the crew coming over from here to do some Newark Pilot baseball. And Jim, you can pick up the pace where you said you were going to have a hard time selling it in Seneca Falls. But now he's going to underwrite the cost.
Well, he's wrapped it into some of his on-site packages with, the guys that buy the outfield signs and they get program sponsors. They're supported well in Newark. So I didn't think – I told him – I told him I don't think there'll be enough interest outside of Newark. And he's got everybody else in Newark. So where am I going to go to sell sponsors? But he wanted to do this because it's such a great service for – the families and coaches of these college players from around the country who come and play in this Perfect Game Baseball League for Newark Pilots. So I'm positive that a lot of people are going to be watching these. And I hope that as a side benefit, there's a lot of people locally check it out. And that brings me to my point of we were talking about how we were going to do this and costs and this and that. And he suggested we get some interns in to do the broadcasting, and I said, Bob, I don't really want to do that. I want to get names that people know, and people that have done it before, because I want to put together a top-notch broadcast, because without that, I don't think anybody in the surrounding areas locally here would tune in. But if they see, Weber and Barnick are doing the game, that's enough right there for a lot of people to check it out. And then hopefully they watch one or two of these games, and they start to follow the pilots in between the games, because they play 52 games. We're only webcasting 8.
8, yeah.
So, hopefully it does draw some attention. But you guys, I tell you, when you get up there, you're going to be really impressed with the facility. From everything is painted and clean. They have great concessions. The concessions are subcontracted out to a local restaurant, so they have a full menu, not only just hamburgers and hot dogs, but a whole bunch of other things. More like you'd see at maybe a big-time minor league park in Syracuse or Rochester, where they're doing all sorts of things. They have great food there. They have a big scoreboard with some, video, not video, but digital.
Jim, explain the perfect game. What is these, college kids? College kids.
Yeah, they're college kids that in the summer want to continue to improve their games. So the general managers, like Brian O'Connell is the general manager of the Pilots. He has to go out and recruit, and they have relationships with certain college coaches. So a coach might call them and say, "Hey, I got a second baseman. You need a second baseman, or you need a pitcher." So they'll recruit, and so there's players from Cal State Fullerton, Texas A&M, Florida State, and then also some local, St. John Fisher, a Clyde, Savannah grads on the roster. So it's a nice mix. It should be, good baseball, summer and baseball. I can't wait to get out to the park and soak some of that.
And as Dave, as you know, they're amateurs, so they're not paid. They're given, I think, Jim, room and board. Some families put up these kids.
And they also stay at the dorms at FLCC.
Right.
I tried to listen to what he was saying, but after he talked about concessions, my mind kind of...
They have garbage plates, Dave.
I've never had one of those.
Well, you might have to this summer.
I mean, we're talking the deluxe, outstanding people,
food.
Outstanding food, and
now we're talking about concessions.
And the food at the country club's been good this year, too.
Really good.
Well, that makes it more family-orientated, and then with the scoreboard doing things now that would keep young kids interested, you could be safe going there with 2 or 3 kids and keeping them entertained, knowing if the baseball game sometimes is not enough for the kids. I mean, you get excited over a 1-0 2-hitter. Maybe the kids wouldn't, and they'd need the food, and they'd need the scoreboard, and they'd need the chicken dancing up on the scoreboard. And I think that's taking it in a good direction.
The park's right off Route 31. If anybody wants to go check out any of these games, you head from where we are in Seneca Falls, you head north to Lyons and head down 31, and it's right on the right. And the first game we're doing a week from Thursday, fireworks after the game, and for almost all the games they have something going on. They really know how to work it. Different promos, different things going on every night. But the first night, the game we're doing, their home opener. Fireworks after the game.
And by the way, we got a spreadsheet you sent us, and maybe update it. 55 of the perfect game of that organization have made it to the pro level, basically earning a check. Doesn't mean they're in the majors. Means they're in some sort of organized baseball. Right, Jimmy?
Right, they're getting paid. They would do single A, double A, triple A.
So I believe 55 so far out of that league.
Earlier this year, I wish I had the kid's name, but I don't. A former member of the Perfect Game Baseball League pitched in relief for the Yankees at Fenway.
Wow.
And as a Yankee fan, you'd think I'd know the guy's name, but
interesting.
But I'm like Paul. I kind of just briefly follow the game until September.
Right. We were talking about the plays of the day and the plays of the week. Always have a couple of college highlights. These kids really play at college. This collegiate level, even the softball with the ladies. My goodness gracious! A girl just reached into over the fence and brought a ball back and doubled some. The quality of play at that level, because they're really excited about and then they move it into this league where Newark is. And I think you're going to be surprised at the quality. You might be seeing people that are ready for the majors within a year.
Sure, and teams come from this Perfect Game Baseball League has teams in Cooperstown, Oneonta, Batavia, Amsterdam, Elmira, the Elmira Pioneers. And I'm sure I'm missing a few others, but they're spread out all across upstate.
Well, I asked Dave to show me how to do the scorebook. I got to learn from him to do the scoring. I've never done that. I've done a couple of baseball games way back when at the Little League field because we had people wanting us to broadcast the games. But Dave's going to have to show me how to do the official book because I need to do that a few times to get it. But we'll figure. By the way, so we can, Dave. Obviously, you were asked to be a part of this, and you have come on board to do a few games. You're not going to do, a complete schedule. You got other things you're doing, obviously, but it's going to be good to have you back. We got Brendan Harrington. Is it Brendan, right?
Yeah, Brendan's probably
he's a radio guy.
I think he's doing 6 of the games. I think there's a couple games where it's going to be Weber Barnick,
right,
and then the rest of the games are going to be Harrington Weber
right,
or Harrington Barnick.
Yeah. But, Dave, it was nice to get you back into it, and you're going to do a limited schedule, certainly based on your availability. But we want to, we think this is a kind of a nice idea to do, and you were mentioning that you're looking forward to being a part of this as well.
Yeah, and you think about community events.
Right.
And we can all recall some of the days in Geneva and
sure,
Newark, how big the minor leagues were there.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the kind of thing... good quality, fun, inexpensive for families.
Right.
A nice summer night should be great.
But it also opens the opportunity for Dave as we move forward in the fall. We are looking at obviously doing some football games, and we're certainly interested in expanding our basketball plans because, as Jim pointed out, we did 3 with phenomenal results. We could expand that to a good-sized level. So, I'm personally happy that you're part of this, Dave, to bring back the deja vu, you and myself working together when we can, but also the opportunities down the road to do a few other sports that, not to the extent like you and me used to do 30 games a year.
Honestly, I'm looking at when I thought about doing all this stuff, I thought to myself, wow,
be fun.
We need to staff this. It's difficult. You need to have backups, too, because if we schedule with the pilots or with a full season of high school basketball, nobody can make every game.
No, it's
so
hard.
We got to go. I mean, we got Matt Verkey for the basketball on the play-by-play, our commentary, which is great.
Yep.
But if we're going to expand, we're not going to be able to have 2 guys do the whole season.
No.
I understand that. So we need to bring more people in. And like I said before, I want to bring in people who have name recognition. And I think that a lot of people got a big kick in those high school basketball games out of hearing you broadcast a game again because it's been.
Oh, we had a good time. I was glad to get back.
Has it been 10 years?
It was 10 years, at least 10, maybe 12 or 13 before I had done a game before that. But it was got the juices flowing, as Dave likes to remind you of. You get to the scene and you get to thinking, boy, can you do this again? And, it starts to ebb and flow. And,
And then the game starts and you just calling it.
And I'm working with one of the best basketball players in all of New York State ever, Matt Verkey, as a commentator.
Who, by the way, did a great job. I mean, there was question. He never called a game. But once the game starts, you get a little nerves and then you just go. You rely on your knowledge and experience. And
also the fact that the video of the fact that Dave, with fingerlakes1.com, which you're going to really appreciate. Not only can you watch your nephew or your niece play and listen to me or you do the play-by-play or Brendan, you can be able to watch them. That's kind of a nice touch, something that we didn't ever had back in the radio days. They used to hear us.
I think that's what made the biggest impact on people because we went and webcast these games. And I don't think people knew what to expect. When they loaded up the stream and they saw a television-style broadcast and they could watch the whole game and hear the commentary.
It was very well done.
I think that they were excited, and I think people will be excited for this year. So, Newark Pilots, New York State Women's Amateur, some high school football, and then really high school basketball. I want to do it up big because the nice thing about that is everybody knows around here in the winter.
Oh yeah.
It's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night or Friday night when we do some of these games. People are going to be sitting at home, and I think they'll be really popular again.
Yeah. Just to recap, by the way, for the Newark, as we emerge for the Newark Pilots starting a week from tomorrow night, first of 8 webcasts here on fingerlakes1.com. Jim Zennegropa, the owner, obviously will be the lead producer of coming to some of these games to set up all the equipment to make sure that we're A-OK.
And along with our secondary producer, Chris Marquardt.
That's right. I was going to mention Chris.
Who proved that he really can handle anything with the way, because he was in charge of those motor racing reports in Verona, Utica, Rome.
Right.
So he did
Phenomenal.
Very confident in him, so he'll be there running the show sometimes too.
And a young man named Brendan Harrington who works for FingerLakesDailyNews.com up in Geneva for the radio stations. I've not heard him up there, but he's very outgoing, and he obviously has done baseball before. So I'll be kind of looking for him to be the lead guy to start off with to see what's going on with that. Of course, myself and David will be working together, and Dave will be working with Brendan. And, of course, our cameraman, Jeremy Hunt, who worked tirelessly for us in basketball.
Yeah, and in addition to the cameraman, he's the guy that's going to help the producer of these things haul the equipment and set up the equipment. He's very important.
So we got a lot in mind, and we got a lot in front of us. And, after this is all said and done, we start getting into some baseball action. We will be anchored down the Country Club. I believe it's July 12th, the final day of the Women's Amateur of New York State. And that should be fun, too, because that'll be a different broadcast. I'll be assisted with Art Lyons, right? The Peter Oosterhouse.
Yeah, Arthur Lyons.
I love his voice. Yep. Good player. I love his Irish voice, or his nice English voice.
English South Africa. Actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
But he's a good guy and a good player as well.
Speaking of golf, there's been a Bubba Watson sighting.
Yes, he's coming to play
Does
this
anybody
week.
know where the tournament is this week?
Memorial, Dublin, Ohio. Jack's tournament.
Does anybody care? I mean, where's Tiger?
It's a big one.
Tiger golfing?
He's going to be there.
He's going to go.
Oh, yeah. Roy's in town.
Bubba's going to play.
Roy's been playing like a pig.
It's almost
lately.
like...
he's in love. Roy's in love.
Yeah, he'll win the U.S. Open this year. So.
Who, Rory?
Yeah.
Right.
He'll come out of the ashes. He's 22 years old. He can rise above this
He's
stuff.
got to stop seeing that Carol Wozniacki girl, because she's a good-looking girl.
Would you stop?
Yeah, he's got millions of
Yeah, I
dollars.
know, but he's playing like a
You
pig.
could say, stop in the name of love before you break. Okay, we didn't cover anything. Now listen.
No, we didn't.
Venus Williams lost in the first round of the French Open.
Goodbye.
She cried. Okay. The angry old men, the Boston Celtics,
My team.
don't have the legs.
Oh, Dave, they look old. They look old, Dave.
No, the cards fell out. It's two-man show. And the two men that are out there are in their 20s, and they're allowed to go up and score 100 points because they have a key player that's out. And Boston's just they've got the incentive, but they're old. And I watched it, and I say they're old. Then there's the happy young men out in San Antonio, guys that are just as old, and they're handling that Thunder group.
Well, the San Antonio also has a nice mix of experience and youth. I mean, that's the nice thing. A lot of people I think don't realize about San Antonio is that their complementary players are young. Yeah,
they're complementary players last night. A guy named Touchdown Tony Parker. I don't know. What did he score? 18 points in both halves? What is he, 90? I mean, in basketball.
He's been around for a while, sure.
Yeah, he's been around for a while. Tim Duncan. I mean, you got to hang on as you get older in sports. I mean, I like the stories, and I understand what Wade and I understand what LeBron James should do, and I know that there's roadblocks in their way, but that's exciting. It's playoff basketball. Nobody's talking about it. Maybe nobody cares. And getting down to the last thing, does anybody know there's the championship in hockey?
It starts tonight.
I've loved it.
Does anybody know who's playing?
Kings and Devils.
Sure.
Does anybody care?
No, I don't care.
I care.
Does anybody know that the 6th seeded in the East, Jersey Devils, got home ice because the Kings are 8th seeded in the West?
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
Nobody
I
cares.
didn't know that.
Don't care.
Paul.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
This is an exciting time, and and people are worried if the Yankees lose or Boston gets over 500. There's a lot of games to play, a lot of games to catch up.
Dave, your Celtics got a last breath to come back in this thing?
Well,
only down 1 game to none.
It's a very uphill struggle. There is no bigger Celtic fan.
I know.
Longer time Celtic fan.
I know.
And I'm happy they got to the conference finals.
Right.
NBA playoffs don't truly start until the home team loses. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what happens tonight,
right.
Let's see what happens in games
Boston.
3 and 4. But it's tough with Allen being maybe 50% a shell of his former self.
Yeah.
Pierce also dinged up. And Bradley, one of the young talents they have, out. I will say, though, tonight is also the draft lottery for the NBA.
Okay.
Where they and I bring that up because there is an open house party at Charlotte, North Carolina for that, where my son is interning.
Right, exactly.
And he's expecting to be at the same open house party with one Michael Jordan.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
What's sort of embarrassing about Charlotte, though, you put everything in perspective. They had a horrific year, winning 7 games, losing 59. The San Antonio Spurs won the first 4 games in both of their divisional series. won more games in 2 series than the entire Bobcat season.
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
They haven't lost since April 12th.
It's amazing.
Or something
That's
like
unbelievable.
That.
Yeah.
I wouldn't underestimate the Thunder, though. Like you say, when they go back home,
Right.
The Thunder in that thunderous place is amazing. So we'll see. I agree with you. You know, the Heat will be favored tonight, and you got to hold home court. But you're right. When they get to Boston, you never know.
But
Dave's a big Boston fan. He knows. I think the key player for Boston tonight. I think they got to steal a game because eventually you got to win a road game if you're Boston because you start. You don't finish home. And I think the key guy, and he's come up with some huge games, and he disappears. Is a kid named Bass. Bass for Boston.
Yeah.
I think he's got to jump in there tonight with some rebounding
LSU.
and some points and stuff like that.
They're really in trouble.
His son tonight is it tonight that party that he's going to be going to? I think as the argument continues over the greatest basketball player that anybody's ever seen to play, I've never seen anybody play the game and take more players to a higher level than Michael Jordan. I watched guys named Weddington, Cartwrights. I watch guys named Paxton and what was the other white shooter for
Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr and another guy. I watch him make players out of
Tony
people.
Kukoc.
And he also had to deal with a very good basketball player named Scottie Pippen.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to do this. I watched Kobe fail at this, and so far LeBron failed at this. Those guys could dominate the game at any time they wanted
I don't
to.
argue with you there. I don't like Kobe Bryant, but I wouldn't say he failed. He won championships with Shaq and without Shaq.
Yeah, but he doesn't raise anybody to a different level. One night,
No,
Boston,
I agree.
They beat somebody 98 to something. He had 48 points. Right. You need to get something out of somebody else, and that's why Michael Jordan just sticks in my craw. One-on-one computer games, he couldn't touch LeBron. He's 6. What is he? 6'6". 200,
Phenomenal.
and LeBron is just like a Greek god moving around on the court. This is just my.
You guys know the story
Yeah.
of how the longer shorts thankfully came into play in basketball?
No.
It started with Michael Jordan, who very much dedicated to his school of North Carolina, would wear his North Carolina shorts underneath the Chicago Bulls shorts, so he had to have the Bulls shorts longer.
There you go.
And you want to embarrass anybody, including myself, all you have to do is look at the shorts that I and many others played in yesteryear. But that's how the longer shorts got going.
Wow.
I'm surely not going to argue with Paul's statements, but only I will say, and I'm not a big NBA follower, I find the game boring. I find the game almost fixed to the level where Dave's team jumps out by 20. You could always bank on it. They're always going to close that 20 down to 2 with 8 minutes to play. I've always wondered about that. If you look at most NBA games, a team jets out to an 18, 22-point lead, but hold on, it's going to get closer. It's almost like it's, choreographed, and that's what's always drove me nuts about NBA. But about LeBron, I'm certainly not going to put him in a class of Michael Jordan. But one thing I must say, pound for pound, looking at this guy, how do you base somebody's skill set? You base it on what their peers think of him, what the other players think of him, the opposition, the enemy. They have voted this guy 3 out of the last 4 years MVP. It's pretty remarkable if you think about it. I mean, LeBron James, to me, to get those kind of accolades from his so-called competitors speaks volumes of what this guy truly can do in a basketball court.
It goes back to the old argument of individual skill and talent versus team success, which you can have the best player on your team in the league on your team, but not win.
Amazing.
That's a great segue into the 3 words: William Felton Russell, Bill Russell, number 6, the greatest winner of all time.
11 straight.
Not 11 straight, 11 and 13 years.
11 and 13 years.
And,
pretty amazing.
And Olympic champion and a 2-time collegiate champion at San Francisco.
And maybe best defensive player ever. Now, let me say something about that. Don't you think guys like Bill Russell or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar get slighted when you talk about best ever because they just think, well, they're just big centers? You tend to look at a guy like LeBron or Michael Jordan or Kobe or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson. The centers kind of get shuffled off to the side, I guess, in that. But Bill Russell certainly and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, are in that conversation.
That was the most unstoppable shot in
the
basketball history, that skyhook of Jabbar's. Of course, he was 7'2", but The other thing is, with Time, Larry Bird was on the cover of Time magazine, stated as the greatest player of all time. That was the article.
Right.
And, but that's passé now.
Sure.
And a lot of kids today, they know who Michael Jordan was, but they don't know a whole lot about the rest of the former greats.
Yeah, let alone,
Well, I think there's
Dr.
two
J.
games, and the game now is people like to watch the players facing the basket. I think the guys that played with their back to the basket, in my youth, there was nobody like George Mikan. Nobody even cares. Nobody knows anything about him.
They had a drill. They named a drill after him.
A guy named Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain scored 100 points and probably could have done it one night a week.
He had sex with 12,000 women, too, on top of it.
Yeah, I didn't want to go.
He averaged 50 points a game that one season. Yeah. And then a couple of years later, he led the league in assists.
Yeah, which is a lot of people don't think of that.
It makes you wonder. It's got to come down to championships.
The thing about NBA basketball, before we wrap this baby up, think about NBA basketball that still amazes me, and you guys can comment, is up and down the court they go with the greatest of ease and with the great speed that they do. And if they focus in on these guys when they get the ball to throw a free throw, they're not breathing hard at all, Dave. It's always amazed me. I mean, amazing condition those guys are in. LeBron, Wade, Celtics, name it. But the way they go up and down the courts with the speed, and to think that when they get the basketball to throw a free throw, they're not even breathing hard at all.
Well, let me say something. This is something I noticed recently.
Yeah, amazing to me.
Kobe Bryant a couple weeks ago said he doesn't take charges. Yep. And then there was a debate. Well, he shouldn't take charges because you're going to get hurt. You're going to shorten your career. They need Kobe to play. Yep. It's not worth a charge. Larry Bird had back problems towards the end of his career, shortened his career in what he could do. And a lot of people think that's because he was so physical. He'd take the charge. He would, go 100% the entire game. That's one reason why regular season NBA is like so boring because they're just pacing themselves, up.
They don't care.
But when the playoffs start, especially when you get to some of these games 6 and 7s, the intensity and the effort is there all game long, which is great to see. But you only get to see that in May and June.
True. Well, Dave's got to give me a description, and maybe Paul can, as a definition of traveling with a basketball. Because, Dave, if you watch any game,
including that Parker last night.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my God. These guys can dance from the free throw line, not take a dribble, and they don't call it travel. I go, what is going on? But that's another subject. Well, Dave, we got to get ready to wrap this baby up. Thanks for coming down, and look forward to working with you in our Newark pilot launch starting a week from tomorrow. It's good to have you inside in the studio.
Thanks for inviting me down. I was thinking about those awards that we were talking about way back when.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to give out the T-shirts, too, the Big East Sport and Design T-shirts.
Exactly.
And a young man who's now probably a 40-year-old adult was telling me he still had his shirt, and this was a few years ago, and how much he
appreciated it.
Did appreciate and revered having it. And that man is also now the pre and post and between period announcers for the Buffalo Sabres, Kevin Sylvester.
Isn't that Kevin Sylvester?
And he still has his Big East Sport Design Player of the Year.
If it hasn't deteriorated in the last 5 years or so, whenever I last saw him.
That's funny.
Maybe it's even been 10, but he certainly went a long way. And those things meant an awful lot to those kids. And thank you for having me down. And I hope the clock could be wound back a little bit for my Celtics. I'm not holding out hope this year. A little bit. I'll be squeezing for
Big game tonight.
A big game tonight. Pauly, any final comments?
No, it's just that Dave is the type of guy that when you sit down with him, I felt as if he's never left.
Yep.
It's like whatever you want to call it, deja vu. He's one of the most unassuming people you ever want to meet, and it's you're sorry you don't see people like that more often. And he's good to be around, and I think he's going to bring a good mix back to the.
He's got to come back to maybe a regular recurring guest on your show.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to get in the booth with him so we can start taking our little shots at each other. That's good. We always had fun doing that. And Dave would always say, he always picked on me about my Ford Fiesta. And also, he said I never bought at the concession stand. He always remembered those days. Remember, Dave? I never borrow $5 from him because he always reminds you to pay it back. So a lot of good memories, Dave. So thanks for coming in. By the way, folks, next week, sitting on the couch, our visitor couch, I trust, will be Bob Ullman, the owner of the Newark Pilots. And the head coach will be alongside him. We are expecting both of those gentlemen to join us for the Dog and Pauly We'll have them on for the hour and a half as we want to go. We almost went an hour and a half today, but we'll have them on next week to talk about the season, what they got in plans, what their deal is with trying to take in Geneva. Bob Oman making a bid to take over Geneva's franchises. The Geneva City Council is supposed to be voting on that pretty soon. Very interesting. Bob Oman, looking forward to meeting him personally, a mover and a shaker, and he'll be our special guest along with the head coach of the Newark Pilots. And then the very next night, June 7th, don't forget, Newark Pilot Baseball right here on fingerlakes1.com, and Jim will have a lot more on the website as the days go by. So thanks to our great sponsors. Again, speaking for Pauly Helstrom and Dave Barnick and Jim Senacropi, we'll catch you next week. Join me Monday for my Weber on Sports show at 9:30 live. And until next Wednesday, we have Bob Oman and the head coach of the Newark Pilots on. Have a great day. This is the Dog and
Pauly Show.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.